majority of CMOs are talking about doing AI, but actually most are dabbling.
The founders were very clear, we are going to be AI first. And that is not AI just dibbling dabbling, this is we want to be one of the leaders.
What are the systems you put in place to realize an AI first mission?
Failure is not experimenting. If we see you doing nothing or not moving fast enough, that's where we fail.
What are you experimenting with now?
Lip sync, translation, dubbing. I think we're on every single Google beta.
I'm here down at Google Beach at Cannes Lion, and I can tell you that AI is dominating the conversations across the festival. But what I'm finding most interesting is the most fascinating parts of the conversation are not actually about the technology itself. It's about how technology is unlocking creativity and how that's empowering teams to do the best possible creative work. In this episode, we're sitting down with Chief Marketing Officer from Loop Earplugs, Rob Weston. And Rob talks about how he's built AI-first systems across marketing, from everything to do with creative, measurement, and execution. I'm really starting to think that the teams that learn the fastest might just be the ones that win in this moment. You are going to love this conversation. Rob, welcome to Cannes.
Thank you for having me.
It is so good to have you here in 32 degrees of heat. I'm sorry.
No, that's you brought a fan. What more could I ask?
We have brought a fan. It is going to be an incredibly hot conversation, but a great conversation. So I can't wait to get into it.
Thank you. I'm sun creamed up and I'm ready to go.
Okay. So I think you'd be forgiven for thinking, if you've just heard of Loop or you've been following Loop lately, that it feels like it's been an overnight success. But I'm guessing you're going to tell us it hasn't actually been an overnight success.
I think like almost all the brands I see, it's an overnight success that took about 10 years. But no, Loop was founded in 2016. Two engineers who really like to party and like motorcycling, but got tinnitus from partying a bit hard and thought there must be a better way than foam earplugs. So developed a product. Sales started very, very well in the concert space, but then COVID hit. So they had to reimagine the business.
Wow, that's a massive
Which
blow.
is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, business almost went under, but after doing so well in music. But that was the point where they just reimagined the entire business and thought, okay, what can earplugs be used for? And they went to everything from obviously sleep, wellness, parenting, literally sort of audio sensitive community. And then they got to 40 million in 2022. And this year, I reckon we'll do 250 million. So the last 4 years have been just exceptional growth.
What direction did you have coming into the job? Or what direction did you set?
So first of all, when I arrived, I hadn't realized quite how dependent on performance we really, really were. So there were 4 pillars we put in place. One was to channel diversity, so making sure we got sources of traffic from more than just Meta. One was retail, so looking at physical availability, making the product easier to sell.
Yeah.
Third was NPD, so moving beyond earplugs and serving piece. And fourth was brand. So again, the idea that we're actually bringing new people into the funnel, so there's a latent demand consistently pulling. We're not just pulling demand out via middle of funnel, bottom of funnel advertising.
So you have a super clear growth strategy, 4 pillars. But then there's also this backdrop, because you guys have been such early adopters of AI, right? So how did the company decide, or did they decide to be AI first?
During my interview, I remember the founders talking about AI and being very excited. So literally before I was born in the company, I guess. And very soon after that, as an exec, the founders were very clear, we are going to be AI first.
So they said the whole company AI first?
100% AI first. And that is not sort of AI just dibbling dabbling. This is we want to be one of the leaders. So right from the very start, it's like we lead, we lead, we lead, we lead. And we take the consequences of whatever that means.
And I think from our position, working with you as a partner in Google, it's been astonishing to see not just that you were early, but the pace at which you guys are moving. So let alone going to market in 3 months, like you're going to market with campaigns in 3 days with VO3 and Nano Banana.
I mean, it is crazy. So I guess we started with the Google suite, as you said, VO, Nano Banana, which were amazing. And I think together we created a case study. We were one of the first companies to create 2 full 30-second ads, start to finish, including sort of people.
So AI generated
start to finish. And then now our objective is to see if we can almost run to a semi-autonomous creator stack where we analyze the performance of our own ads, but also competitor ads. That feeds into a brief. Then once you've got that creative strategy, it goes in from Monday boards to Figma, so the briefing of the studio.
Yeah.
The studio now I think we've talked about 95% of our ads are touched in some way, shape or form by AI. And we'll use it either for static or for sort of simple form video we'll touch up. And then you're back to the attribution again as well. So again, the learning what worked, what didn't, and feeding that into the funnel. So it's touching pretty much all of our creative process.
That's incredible. So you came in 2 years ago, and then you have this early mandate, we're AI first. I can't even begin to process the numbers of ways of working that had to change for you to get to the point you are now, right? So like, where did you start? Like, what are the systems you put in place early doors to realize an AI first mission?
It's so true. And I guess the very thing I have to say on this is it's not just me, it's an entire company, it's a leadership exec, but I'll talk you through some of the things we talked about. So initially we debated, is it bottom up, top down? Do we need a CTO? Do we need a separate team? Do they drive AI all the way through? We actually went 360 on that one, although interesting enough, we're coming back on that one now as we realize that the data foundations need to be really solid. But where in marketing we took off is that we found a few AI champions, so people who were absolutely exceptional at what they did and understanding the modern technology, and we embedded them in the studio team, and we said go. And a very, very clear mandate from the founding team to me, but also me to the team, is that failure is not experimenting. So literally it is fail fast, but we want to literally, if we see you doing nothing or not moving fast enough, that's where we fail. And so with that mandate, literally everyone in the studio was able to, first of all, learn, but secondly, adopt as they wanted. And that's where the whole 30-second piece came out of making sort of full TV ads start to finish. That wasn't a directive from me, that was the team going, okay, now we can see what we could do, let's have a go.
I always have, I have a phrase that I use with my kids and as well at work, like win some, learn some. And I think that just comes out in everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're saying experimentation, curiosity, like what we're trying to do here is so new, it's so frontier that creating the safety to fail, but the clarity of the mission and the expectation, I think that's super powerful in leadership.
The safety to fail is a really interesting one, because literally as we'd created those 30-second pieces, our PR team came up to me and said, we can't run it. We're going to get
Why?
We're going to get pasted because public sentiment.
Yeah, fair. Yeah,
it was an AI ad, and say, look, you're going to get so many people turned off the brand. And I have to admit, I hesitated properly as we did it, but we had again a discussion within the exec, and we said, look, our belief is we're AI first. We go with it, and we own the consequences, and we did. And I think so we didn't get too much of a backlash on that starting point. But what is interesting is now, since we've learned and we've observed other brands, we have moderated a little bit where we'll use full AI in video. So we use it more for comedy, fantasy, those areas which are obviously AI and not pretending. So I think, we've gone through, sort of the fail fast and then learning and then sort of working out, okay, how does it work within our ecosystem?
I mean, it really is extraordinary, and it's not that common. I think, the majority of CMOs are talking about doing AI, but actually most are dabbling at best, if we're honest. And I think just the size of the change is hard. And so I think, respect for the direction you're going. But we think about then what AI looks like in your advertising. So one of the things I thought was amazing when we were preparing for this conversation was how you've also gone all in on Google's AI ad solutions, right? So we talk about our Power Pack, we talk about AI Max, PMax, Demand Gen, and how those three campaign types act like this massive flywheel, right? And together they perform best. And so to see you guys going all in on not just one of those campaigns, but all three together, I think you've reached 600,000 brand new customers in the last 12 months. Like the incrementality, the impact of that's massive.
We don't have massive repeat business. So we are in acquisition mode all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So therefore, finding new audiences, new interest groups, new geographies is the job. And again, that's where the full funnel approach within all the full Google stack has been so useful and important. And it was 600,000 just within 1 year, and we're still going as well. And I think if I remember, the CPM was at about €3. So again, so we did it.
There's an efficiency there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's no holding back on the experimentation. What are you experimenting with now?
Some of the most exciting pieces of the puzzle are the ability to scrape everything from Reddit feeds. So to understand, and I think this is a great example. So one really recent example was, I think they scraped all of our Reddit feeds and heard someone talking about, my husband sounds like a tractor when he sleeps. and so
I can relate.
From millions and millions and millions of feeds, the AI was able to surface this as a thematic and language that we can then feed into our creative brief and then through. So we're scraping, but not just Reddit, literally from the web itself, categorizing it. So looking about how are people using or how are people talking about products. So like I said, from not just sleep, but sleeping like a tractor, parenting and how are you using it. And that's helping make our creative strategy briefs much, much richer. And then, as I said, it's then the speed of the back-end process from taking those briefs, serving them to the studio in a way that's not in the Monday board, which is how we write our briefs, but in Figma. And then, as I said, using Nano Banana or VO or many of the other creative tools to do things much faster, much more efficiently, which enables then the flywheel to test and learn. And also, the other thing at Loop is we do play quite a heavy game in creative volume. So we like to get a lot of creative out there just to see and test what sticks. And that's another thing about AI in terms of the way it serves advertising to consumers. I think one of the things that we realized early on is we are not the best people to work out who's going to use our product. Actually, the algorithms are.
Yeah.
So our job is to create creative for as many need states as possible, and then it's served up to as many audiences as we never even imagined, actually.
And then the learning loop continues.
Exactly.
Are you guys messing around with translation? Are you trying?
So lip sync, translation, dubbing. I think we're on every single Google beta, every single product.
It's good
we're
to hear
first
that.
to trial.
And I love your point on, sleeping like a tractor. That's a really nice example of humans in the loop with AI.
Yes.
Like it's a creative judgment call, but it's the nuance of spotting a good insight and then playing that and then being able to do that with such agility and such scale. I'd be really interested to talk about the new customers that you're acquiring, the incrementality.
Yep.
Right? So how are you testing? So if you're running a demand gen campaign, for example, a PMEX campaign, for example, like how are you approaching incrementality testing?
Yep.
Like how do you know it's genuinely new customers?
So the big challenge this year, we're actually going to try and find 10 million in new sales just for our YouTube test. And so we've set out a trial, and I've committed to YouTube that I will do everything you tell me. And I will keep spending as long as the metrics are moving in the right direction. So we've set up this awesome test where we've looked at all the different types of creative you need at all different types of channel stage. And traditionally we've operated around the middle of the funnel, so we're adapting some of our best, we're adding some new ones. And we've got a big measurement framework set out around that. So we're using a number of different tools. So one is House, which splits the US up into multiple different sort of areas where we're incrementality test. So we've got a blank cell versus one with Meta, some with Google, and we're looking at the interplay of all of those. We're also using ABS, Attributed Brand Search, which I'm particularly excited about because that going beyond the scientific method, it's actually about literally taking from an impression base within 7 days, has someone who's seen that ad, do they click? And it's a very conservative measurement because obviously it doesn't pick up a lot of privacy and VPNs and stuff like that. But it has been an amazing way of me getting comfortable that something's happening. So I think even just since April, we've seen 15,000 accredited searches just from our small scale trial, which is fabulous. And again, it gives me the confidence to push forwards.
I love that the gap between, because I think sometimes there's such a big gap between brand and intent, and it's understanding what's going on in that middle part. And so for us, I think attributed brand search has been a game changer, or at least we think it's going to be a game changer.
Honestly, it's been brilliant because the other way that we've been using it is as a way of playing. We play a very aggressive game in our advertising. And so we've actually changed, and this again was sort of more a push from the founders than even myself, was to push for our investing in leading indicators. So rather than waiting 12 weeks or 14 weeks for a full incrementality test and then we stop and we measure, what we've actually decided to do is run this test via leading indicators. So see if I get this right, it was the conversion lift, brand lift, traffic, and ABS, attributed brand search. And as long as they're all moving in the right direction, then we're going to keep spending and we're going to keep pushing forwards. And then we measure iROAS as that comes back. And at the moment, I think even just since April, we're at an iROAS of 1. We want a minimum 1.25 and grow from there, 1.45 and grow from there. And we're very confident we're going to get there. But again, for us, and again, for me, learning as a CMO, this has been a much, much more aggressive way of playing. And like I said, just as long as you're confident you're moving in the right direction, then we go. And that's a credit to the founders. It's a credit to our CFO, who's backing on that as well. He said, look, I'm with you guys. As long as we're showing something's happening, then we move.
And I'd love to see, I think the role of the CFO in all of this, at this moment in time, I think is so fundamental because the rules of the marketing game have changed entirely. And so A, having that clear direction top down, that we're all in on this approach, but B, having alignment between the CFO and yourself to say, no, we are looking at these numbers, we're aligned on these numbers, and as long as they're telling us we're going in the right direction, then we double down. I mean, that is pretty unique and clearly effective.
It is. The other thing as well is in other businesses I've been, people have almost trusted the absolute number too much.
Yeah.
So, no measurement is perfect.
It's a probabilistic.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So therefore, I think having an enlightened executive team around the table, which says, okay, we're willing to add a layer of trust, as long as everything's moving in the right direction, we can see how this is going, then we're going to back it and go with. And I think one example I used in a previous talk I did was some of the returns are obviously oblique. We sponsored Coachella this year, and we got some great sales, et cetera, et cetera. But what we didn't see was we got a listing in Target, courtesy of the buyer being at Coachella. So you'd never pick that up in attribution. So sometimes you've just got to trust the process.
That's a super example. So, can I be bold enough to ask you about the budget piece? You've set all the leading indicators and you're watching and you have your reasons to invest. There is a piece, I think, when people are trying a new channel or new media, or they're looking for a new audience or a new market, there's an instinct to be tentative, right? So how do you think about budgets and how much you invest? What's the threshold? Yeah,
it's a really good question, and one I think last year we started trying to do small, but I always had the gut feel that, we're a $200 million business. And to actually see a difference, you actually have to put a reasonable bet on the table.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is I was very confident that using or sort of investing in the likes of YouTube, well, we used a very small amount of money to see if there was a bite on the line. And after that, it was like, right, now we've got to invest to make sure we see a proper signal and go. So I've definitely learned as well to be a little bit more bullish. If the story makes sense, trust your judgment and go, and then we'll double down as we see the effects coming through on the leading indicators. We'll go harder and harder and harder.
And that makes a lot of sense. It's good. There's a tiny technical point which I think I wanted to pick up on. It's interesting on the attribution window.
Yeah.
Right, because you're in this incrementality game and a new customer acquisition game. At some point, I remember the team telling me that you started to take a slightly wider window view. Of what's happening.
That's right. Loop is exceptional on its focus on unit economics. And the reason the company, before I joined, is one of the best performances in the business is because they paid so much attention to the measurement around that. But again, knowing there wasn't masses of repeat business about an earplug, we needed to be profitable on first sale.
Yeah.
So therefore, that was 7-day attribution window. We needed to make sure we were making that money and coming back. But obviously, once you grow to a certain stage and you need to use new channels or different channels, they work on a slightly different attribution window. So for YouTube top of funnel, or the current test we're running a 12-week attribution window, which for the business has been an interesting one to get used to. But like I said, so we look at the leading indicators every week, so we're not just
it's not spray and pray. Yeah.
So we're seeing how we go. But yes, and then I'm also confident that I'll see attribution beyond that 12. So again, as long as I know that we're building and accumulating, that's right. But yes, it has been a big step for us to think beyond just 7 days.
And there's two things in that I think are impressive, but also interesting for people listening to this to learn from. I think there's the clarity on what you're trying to do, and then, as you said, the bullish, there's the confidence to double down. But there's the structure and the systems that you put in place, and you're so disciplined on measurement. And so once you have the structure in place, then finding the confidence, I guess, to invest is a lot easier.
I mean, I think I'm probably sort of one of the luckiest CMOs ever in this role because I inherited such a good measurement team. And I sort of look at myself, if I moved on elsewhere, could I rebuild, the same characters? Because they all do such an incredible job at not just running the right experiments, taking into account the right nuances in all of the different channels, because we know it's not perfect, but then surfacing the data in such a way that you can actually do something with it. For me, that's the best trial of an insights team or a measurement team, is they're not just giving you a number, they're giving you a number and a story, and a what next. So yeah, I was incredibly lucky to inherit such a good setup.
That's a nice gift. Yeah, that's an early momentum, which is nice. Let's dig into YouTube a little bit more. So you're using YouTube brilliantly to find new audiences, new markets. You're moving into the US. What about Shorts in particular? Because you guys are avid users of Shorts campaigns.
So we grew up largely through Meta as our demand drive, and then we used Google and the search ecosystem to help convert. And now we're layering YouTube on top of that ecosystem as a complement. And I think historically, I always had a view that YouTube was a sort of top of funnel. It had to have a bespoke creative. And then through, I guess, educating myself a bit more. And I know sort of strategically for you guys, you've been looking to develop it as much more full funnel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Program. And so we then suddenly realized that actually a lot of the conversion layer shots that we had actually would probably perform really well on Shorts as much as they did on Meta, because again, we're looking for new audiences doing a similar thing. So what we've done, we've taken, if you like, the best of, we've used that to learn what works on Shorts, but we've also, again, taken a lot of direction from Tony, the creative team at YouTube, to say, okay, what do we need at each level of the funnel? So we actually found we were pretty good at the conversion layer, not bad at the education layer, demand gen, but we filled in a few gaps. And then more at the sort of the top of funnel, some of the how-tos, some of the longer form content is where we fill the gaps. We're using YouTube literally as a full funnel approach. And what is great for us is that's all measurable.
And I think it's all measurable, and it's how it works best. And the benefits of that, I think, are so interesting. Those how-to videos you mentioned, for example, like we're seeing how much of an impact that's having on search, on LLM, sending really rich signals.
Yeah, it is. And I guess for us as well, funnily enough, so many people who even put the Loop Earplugs in the wrong way. So actually even just the how-to of actually how to apply it is quite important. And probably how to stop your husband sleeping like a tractor.
Like
it's going to be a new one that I'll have to look.
So we're at Cannes Festival of Creativity. There are so many creators here milling about off camera. How do you work with creators? You've got some pretty high profile creators on your books.
We have. So early on, one of the strategies we put in place was to use partnerships and creators as a leading part of our brand pillar, if you like. And there was a strong reason for that, is that if you look at the 5 jobs to be done I have, certainly within the music sphere, are people don't even know there's a problem going to a concert, which is, my ears ringing, isn't that normal?
Yeah.
Whereas actually, no, it's not normal, it's not good. And then did I know there was a solution? There's, acoustic filters, did they exist? I didn't know. Third, there's a stigma. Isn't, using earplugs, do I really want to do that? And then is Loop, hadn't heard about Loop, and then is Loop any good? So I've got 5 challenges there in terms of jobs to be done, and using creators and influencers allows me to run through that funnel so quickly. Because you use the right person. So for instance, at the moment, we've partnered with Harry Styles and his brand Pleasing, and you get the endorsement of Harry, taking stigma out of the equation. You get the fact that these are sort of almost anointed on high for concerts, so you get the permission running all the way through. So we've launched at a partnership level with McLaren, with Coachella, with Harry at a very, very macro layer, and then we've used many content ecosystems, in particular Google's, to fill in the gaps and find so many more communities that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to talk to as a secondary layer.
So all of these sub-communities within the sub-communities within the communities are growing. And I think it's interesting you say that, and that plays out in the data that we see too. So when we see the data about YouTube creators, there's an enormous amount of trust. So I think 78% of viewers will say that YouTube creators provide the most trusted product recommendations. And that 78% is much above the social average, which I think is about 60% on other platforms. So do you see that trust then play out through to sales?
100%. I see it on 2 levels. First of all, I see the data, but secondly, I just understand, because I understand the mechanic implicitly, which is, if I'm just serving you an ad, which I know is an ad, that's going to have a certain effect on me. But if you've got a creator who I'm tuned into as a sort of follower, I follow an audience, I trust them. If they are telling me that story, then I trust that there's a level of integrity in the way they've done it. But B, they're also able to tell the story in a way that works in the channel, just as we are in a conversation. So I think that sort of conversational commerce, or the ability just to explain what an earplug does, why it does it in really simple terms that don't have to be filtered into 15 seconds, I'm sure is so valuable. And the other thing as well creators enable us to do is tell stories that we can't tell of ourselves.
That's a great point. So if I'm not mistaken, we enrolled you guys in the Brand Deals Partnership Program.
Yep.
Right, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thinking on how you boost creator partner campaigns?
That's been a really useful package for us in terms of the ability to source, create the contracts, create the creative, and list out. And we've been using it in a ton of different ways, but ultimately for us, it's about finding different communities. And you know, we have so many micro communities in Loop because our products serve so many different need states. So like I said, parents, the audio sensitive, neurodiverse, concert goers, Harry fans. So for instance, with Harry, the Harry tour I've got at the moment, we can run it geographically. So between Amsterdam, London, New York, we can find Harry fans, we can find music fans. So it's a great complement to, you know, sort of a macro big brand layer, use a Harry Styles or a very, very famous brand, and then break your story down into its much, much more community-oriented component parts.
That's such an interesting way of framing it, because you kind of got this matrix then of like creator strategy. And when you start to think about the amount of context that you can enter, you start to very quickly get your head around how that helps you scale so fast.
For a brand with lots of stories we can tell, it's a bit like a sweetie shop.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there is, just like there was an app for that, there's a creator for that in terms of the story you want to tell or the audience you want to reach.
And the depth that I think those creators bring your brand into, like YouTube creators specifically have just such a deep level of engagement because people are there because they're passionate about that specific thing, whether it's parenting in my case, you know, like you're deep into it. So I think being able to go into a sub-community of a community to that depth is amazing. And an ad would never let you penetrate that level of conversation.
Such high engagement.
Yeah, and such authenticity. And we overuse that word, but it is genuinely true.
Absolutely.
How does demand gen then help you sort of show up as that performance engine?
And that's where, when we were talking to the Google team, they said, right, you start first. This is where you start. Demand gen, so it's the how-tos, it's the slightly more practical, what is the product and where we go. And then we've got shorts, or some of the ads are converting us there down. So we filmed a whole variety of what we thought was missing, whether it's in how-to videos or the rest. And then for VVC, which is the video-driven layer at the top, we've been shooting very bespoke creative again there. And as long as via AI or any other sort of production mechanism, you can come up with different creatives, you can test the creatives, you can see what works. And that honestly has been liberating for me, because it sort of takes so much of the guesswork out of it. You can play a little bit of instinct, but then you can see, and then you can make again and again.
And it de-risks.
No, I know,
massively.
Absolutely.
And so that confidence is a lot easier to find when you're lighting lots of little fires. If anyone's watching this thinking, oh my God, we're not exactly where Loop are right now. How do we catch up? How do we win? How do we succeed? What top tips would you give them?
Well, if you're a competitor, you're not allowed them.
Okay.
But no, I think that top tips would be number one. Well, I think know how you play the game to start with, and make sure that everyone is behind you as you play that game. So we've known that we were going to play aggressive, and I've had the support of founders, CFO, broadly speaking, the exec, to know how we play the game, and that gives the team psychological security to go and play. So whether that's in AI and knowing that they're expected to experiment, or in creative, you know, you're expected to experiment, that's really, really key. So just make sure you understand and give the team the psychological safety to experiment. And number two is, once you've experimented enough, I think be bold. Trust the level of your judgment. So this was the example I gave from moving to a 7 day to a 12-week attribution window. Just trust a little bit in the process and the education that you've had over the years. And third, again, very specific to my case, but I think for many brands, is the power of the creator in terms of telling stories, telling stories that you can't as a brand, but telling them in the way you can't as well, which complements the entire marketing mix.
Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure. There are so many nuggets. I'm going to play this back and write down everything you said. I'm no doubt it's been incredibly useful to everybody watching. You've done so well in 32 Degrees.
Yeah,
You're very grateful.
Thank you very much. Like I said, the first VOD I've done in shorts and in sun cream. And looking at the
We're breaking
sand,
more new ground.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being such a brilliant partner. Thank you so much.